strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Good morning, Asia. Good evening, America. You are watching World DNA with me, Jyotsna Kumar.
And I'm Diksha Bisla, and on the show today, as India continues its diplomatic outreach, the all-party delegation led by BJP leader Ravi Shankar Prasad arrived in the French capital of Paris on Sunday. Now, it's come there for the first stop of their six-country mission to reiterate India's zero-tolerance stance on terrorism. The group is scheduled to hold a series of meetings with community groups, think tanks and parliamentarians in Paris. We're going to bring you all the details on that front on the show today.
And also on the show, we talk about US President Donald Trump, who has issued a rare rebuke to Russian leader Vladimir Putin, saying he was not happy with him after Moscow launched a record number of drones against Ukraine, killing 13 people across the country. Now, Trump has expressed admiration for Putin in the past, but has in recent weeks shown growing frustration with Moscow's position in truce negotiations with Kiev, which are deadlocked. We'll bring you more on that, but first the headlines.
India's global outreach continues. An all-party delegation led by BJP MP Ravi Shankar Prasad arrives in the French capital, Paris, to also visit UK, Germany, Italy and Denmark to convey India's strong and clear stance against terrorism. Congress MP Priyanka Chaturvedi, former Minister MJ Akbar and Ambassador Pankaj Saran are also part of the delegation.
India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar and his Canadian counterpart Anita Anand hold their first phone conversation. Talks focus on deepening bilateral economic ties and advancing shared priorities.
Bangladesh's interim leader Muhammad Yunus urges unity on the second day of the marathon talks with multiple political parties. Says power struggles risk jeopardizing gains made so far amid pressure from BNP to hold polls by December.
Hezbollah reiterates it will not discuss giving up its remaining weapons until Israel withdraws from the points it is occupying in southern Lebanon and stops conducting airstrikes.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu meets U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem as she visits Jerusalem. Her visit follows the killing of 2 Israeli embassy staffers in Washington last week.
He's killing a lot of people. I don't know what's wrong with him. What the hell happened to him, right?
U.S. President Donald Trump blasts Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin over the bombing of Ukraine, says he's not happy with him.
US President Donald Trump seeks names and countries of every international student enrolled at Harvard University, calls it a reasonable request, citing billions of dollars being given to the Ivy League university.
George Floyd's family and activists gather at his burial place to commemorate 5 years since his killing in Minneapolis.
Got two sisters Get right here, please.
Rafael Nadal was given an emotional farewell at the French Open as the Big Four united. His legacy is now forever etched in clay, with his footprints finding a home in the history of Roland Garros.
While India continues to expand its global outreach post-Operation Sindoor.
A 9-member all-party delegation led by BJP MP Ravi Shankar Prasad has arrived in Paris to convey India's strong and clear stance against terrorism.
Now, the 9-member delegation will engage with leaders in France, UK, Germany, EU, Italy and Denmark. The delegation aims to brief international partners on India's response to the Pahalgam terror attack and its fight against cross-border terrorism emanating from Pakistan.
Well, earlier, an all-party delegation to the US, led by Congress MP Shashi Tharoor, had emphasized that Pakistan will have to pay a higher price for backing terror.
Now, speaking during an interaction at the Indian consulate in New York, Tharoor said that no one in Pakistan should believe that they can just walk across a border and kill Indians with impunity.
No one sitting in Pakistan is going to be allowed to believe that they can just walk across the border and kill our citizens with impunity. There will be a price to pay, and that price has been going up systematically.
Meanwhile, the delegation to Bahrain, led by BJP MP Baijant Panda, explained India's measured and calibrated response towards Pakistan's actions. AIMIM chief Asaduddin Owaisi is also part of the delegation. He referred to Pakistan as a failed state and added that there was no difference between the Pakistani terrorists responsible for the Pahalgam terror attack and ISIS in Syria.
In our opinion, there is no difference between these terrorist organizations in Pakistan and the ISIS Takfiri ideology. This we must remember. This is a menace to the whole humankind, and we have to put an end to it because they have used religion to justify killing of people.
Baijant Panda, who is leading the delegation, also emphasized that under India's changed doctrine, it will now impose costs on Pakistan for any terror activities against India.
And our changed doctrine that we will impose a cost on Pakistan every time there is a terror attack, and we will not be cowed down by their nuclear blackmail, and also that blood and water cannot flow together.
Meanwhile, India continues to maintain strong vigil along the border areas to respond to any cross-border threat. Chief of Defence Staff General Anil Chauhan carried out a strategic review of the Indian Army's combat readiness at the northern and western theatres. The two crucial commands had played a major role during Operation Sindoor. The CDS emphasised the importance of continued vigilance and synergy across the services to address evolving threats. In a move to speed up the delivery of the remaining two S-400 air defense systems from Russia, India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval will be visiting Moscow next week.
Now, Doval's visit comes amid reports that India could place fresh orders for additional units of the S-400 systems to bolster the country's defenses.
The NSA will take part in the 13th international meeting of top-level officials on security issues in Moscow over the next 3 days. The event will be chaired by the Russian Security Council Secretary Sergei Shoigu. Reports suggest that Doval will also hold bilateral talks with Shoigu on the sidelines of the summit.
Doval's Russia visit holds significance. as New Delhi looks to deepen its political and defense ties with Moscow in countering terror infrastructure in Pakistan. The talks on dispatching the remaining S-400 air defense system comes as tensions continue to intensify between India and Pakistan following Operation Sindoor. The Sudarshan Chakra is the Indian name given to the S-400 Triumph air defense missile system acquired from Russia.
The S-400 is among the most advanced surface-to-air missile systems in the world. The air defense systems can engage in aerial targets at ranges of up to 400 kilometers. It can also detect threats which are as far as 600 kilometers away. But back in 2018, India signed a $5.43 billion deal with Russia to procure 5 S-400 units. 3 years later, the first S-400 system was deployed in Punjab to bolster India's defense against threats from Pakistan and China.
Well, in other global news, U.S. President Donald Trump has issued a rare rebuke to his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, in a post on social media. Trump warned that any attempt to take over Ukraine would lead to the downfall of Russia.
Well, the U.S. president said that he's not happy with his Russian counterpart after Moscow launched a record number of drones against Ukraine, killing 13 people.
This comes even as Kiev and Moscow completed their biggest prisoner exchange since the start of the war.
Responding to a reporter's question, Trump said he was absolutely considering increasing U.S. sanctions on Russia in response to the latest violence.
Now, the statement is at odds with the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's testimony at Congress last week when he said Trump believed that right now, if you start threatening sanctions, the Russians will stop talking.
Absolutely. He's killing a lot of people. I don't know what's wrong with him. What the hell happened to him, right? He's killing a lot of people. I'm not happy about that. Go ahead. What else? Anything else?
Meanwhile, Germany has urged Ukraine's allies to react with determination. Foreign Minister Johann Wadepool has told AFP's Russia's attack on Ukraine cannot be accepted.
Now, he called the latest developments a sign that Putin does not want peace. He said he wants to carry on the war and highlighted how he should not be allowed to do this, announcing the approval of further sanctions at a European level.
Last week, the EU formally adopted a 17th round of sanction, blacklisting some 200 tankers in the shadow fleet used by Moscow to circumvent restrictions on oil exports.
A final push.
Israel's offensive in Gaza continues.
Rescuers say at least 22 people lost their lives and dozens were injured in the latest Israeli strikes that hit the Gaza Strip.
The strikes on Sunday come as Israel has stepped up its Gaza operations in the recent days in what has been described as a renewed push to destroy Hamas.
Now, fatal strikes were also recorded around Deir el-Balah in the center of the enclave, Beit Lahiya in the north, and the main southern city of Khan Yunis.
The strikes came as U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem was visiting Israel on Sunday. Now, according to Israel's Prime Minister's office, Noem was accompanied at a meeting with Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu by U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee.
Meanwhile, 2 Red Cross workers were also killed in a strike on their home in the Gaza city of Khan Yunis. This is according to the humanitarian body, as it made an urgent appeal for a ceasefire in the conflict.
What is the reason for assassinating them? What did they do? Words cannot express all this. They, Israel, don't distinguish press or safety. They don't have any red lines. This Israeli occupation is exterminating all of the Palestinian people with all its factions. Their task is extermination.
Also, Friday strikes by Israel claimed the lives of 9 children in Gaza.
The Palestinian Civil Defense recovered the bodies of the 9 children of a family in Khan Yunis. The strikes took the life of 9 out of 10 children, while the only surviving child was injured.
Well, as part of its military onslaught since the Hamas October 7, 2023 attack, Israel resumed strikes in Gaza after the ending of a ceasefire in March and has stepped up the campaign since May 17th.
Now, as Israeli troops expand their military operations in Gaza, European and Arab nations have gathered in Madrid to urge a halt to this offensive. Before the meeting opened, Spanish Foreign Minister Jose Manuel Alvarez said that Israel's senseless war in Gaza must stop. This as a 2-month aid blockade has worsened the shortages of food, water, fuel and medicine in the Palestinian enclave, stoking fears of famine. Aid organizations say the trickle of supplies Israel has recently allowed to enter falls far short of needs.
First, if the war does not stop, the association agreement between the European Union and Israel, which is based on Article 2 and therefore on respect for human rights, must be suspended immediately. We must all implement an arms embargo. There can be no arms sales to Israel.
While Gaza's health ministry said on Sunday that at least 3,785 people had been killed in the territory since a ceasefire collapsed on March 18th, taking the war's overall toll to 53,939, mostly civilians.
On developments from Lebanon, Hezbollah leader Naim Qassem reiterated on Sunday that the group's stance is that he will not discuss giving up its remaining weapons until Israel withdraws from the points it is occupying in the southern Lebanon and stops conducting airstrikes.
We are still under Israeli aggression. We have fully committed. Let it be clear to everyone. Do not ask anything of us anymore. Let Israel withdraw, stop its aggression, release the prisoners, and fulfill all the obligations in the agreement. After that, we can talk about anything else.
Qassem's remark came nearly 6 months after the latest Israel-Hezbollah war, which ended with a US-brokered ceasefire agreement. Now, under the ceasefire deal, Israel and Hezbollah were supposed to withdraw their forces from southern Lebanon, with the Lebanese army taking control alongside UN peacekeepers. However, Israeli forces continue to remain in 5 key border points in southern Lebanon, and Israeli officials have said that they plan to remain there indefinitely to secure their border.
Well, moving on, U.S. President Donald Trump has defended his administration's move to block foreign students at Harvard.
Well, this is after a judge suspended the action, branded by the top university as unlawful.
Now, Trump, in a post on his Truth Social platform, questioned Harvard, saying that almost 31% of their students are from foreign lands, including some that are not friendly to the United States. He said the administration wants to know who those foreign students are, saying that it is a reasonable request since the administration is giving Harvard billions of dollars.
Well, on Thursday, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem revoked Harvard's ability to enroll foreign nationals.
In a letter to the Ivy League institution, Kristi Noem wrote, "Effective immediately, Harvard University student and exchange visitor program certification is revoked." And this is referring to the main system by which foreign students are permitted to study in the U.S.
Well, following the administrative move, Harvard filed a lawsuit in Massachusetts federal court on Friday. But later, a judge quickly suspended the move after the university sued to stop the government's arbitrary, capricious, unlawful and unconstitutional action.
I think Trump's decision to ban international students at Harvard University is a terrible choice. I think that America is built off of diversity and being a melting pot, and we need to, value everybody and not discriminate against people just because of them being from a different place.
Kristi Noem mentioned in the same letter that this administration is holding Harvard accountable for fostering violence, anti-Semitism, and coordinating with the Chinese Communist Party on its campus.
Well, Chinese students make up more than a fifth of Harvard's international enrollment. Beijing condemned the decision and said that it will only harm the image and international standing of the United States.
Now, the White House is cracking down on U.S. universities on several fronts, justified as a reaction to uncontrolled anti-Semitism, a need to reverse diversity programs aimed at addressing historical oppression of minorities.
Well, it has also moved to revoke visas and deport foreign students involved in protests against the war in Hamas, accusing them of supporting Palestinian militant group Hamas.
Now, at Harvard, the government has threatened to put $9 billion of funding under review, then went on to freeze a first tranche of $2.2 billion of grants and a $60 million of official contracts. It has also targeted a Harvard Medical School researcher for deportation, the loss of foreign nationals, which is more than a quarter of its student body. And this could prove costly to Harvard, which charges tens of thousands of dollars a year in tuition.
And German Finance Minister Lars Klingbeil is calling for discussions with the United States.
And this is in the wake of the American president's tariff threat to the European Union. Now, Donald Trump has said all EU imports will be subject to 50% tariff from the 1st of June.
An economic research institute in Berlin has estimated that the tariff hike could cause German GDP to shrink by 0.1% this year. And these losses are likely to increase in subsequent years. The German Economic Institute estimates the German economy could lose about 200 billion euros by the end of 2028, while losses could increase to 250 billion euros if the EU imposes retaliatory tariffs.
Now, immediately after Trump's threat, Germany's car makers were hit hard, with BMW down 3.7%, Volkswagen off 2.6%, and Mercedes-Benz down 4%.
Now, amid the mounting trade tensions, Germany has reiterated its support to the EU's ongoing stance on US tariffs. It is simultaneously seeking to renew discussions with the US to possibly dodge the shockwaves that are set to be in effect from June 1st.
Now, the German finance minister has assured that the country is not looking for any further provocations, but only negotiations after speaking to his American counterpart, Scott Bessent.
Well, Trump's tariff threat came earlier this week when he claimed that trade discussions with the Commission were not going anywhere.
The U.S. president has long accused the 27-member bloc of which Germany is a part of exploiting the U.S. and taking advantage of it in matters of trade. He also accused the Commission of being difficult to strike a deal with.
Where are the kind of points
very slow moving? I've been saying to everybody, they've treated us very badly over the years. It was formed in order to hurt the United States, in order to take advantage of the United States, and they've done that. We have a big deficit with them. They sell millions and millions of cars, as you know, Mercedes and BMW and Volkswagen and many others. And we were restricted from, essentially restricted from selling cars into the European Union.
In other news, Venezuela is holding its parliamentary elections.
But just like every other polling exercise in the sanctions-hit South American nation, these elections are also mired with accusations of fraud.
And Venezuelans are heading to the polling stations to elect 24 state governors and 285 National Assembly members. Some see these elections as an expansion of President Nicolas Maduro's dominance. Opposition remains divided on how to deal with Maduro's power play.
Well, the biggest opposition party has called on Venezuelans to not legitimize and boycott what they call yet another sham elections. Meanwhile, another small opposition faction led by two-time former presidential candidate Henrique Capriles rejected the boycott, saying it would only help Maduro to expand his grip on power.
Maduro's crackdown on opposition continues just before the arrest. Close ally of opposition leader Maria Corina Machado was arrested on the charges of leading a terrorist plot. In a pre-recorded message, Juan Pablo Guanipa accused Maduro of dictatorship and said he has no way out.
No tiene escapatoria Nicolás Maduro.
He has no way out, Nicolas Maduro. He has no way to prove the farce announced to the country by his lieutenant, president of the National Electoral Council. All those spurious institutions, the Supreme Court, the CNE, the Armed Forces, the Military High Command, the prosecutor, all of them can unite, but they will not be able to defeat the Venezuelan people.
Este pueblo ha demostrado de lo que está hecho.
Maduro has deployed more than 400,000 security agents to monitor the vote. Venezuela has also ordered temporary closure of its borders with the neighboring countries, including Colombia. And with that, it's time for a quick break.
But don't go anywhere. We have lots up on the other side of World DNA. Bangladesh's interim leader, Muhammad Yunus, has called for rival parties to give him their full support. And this comes after a second day of marathon talks with various political parties in Dhaka. We'll get you more on the other side.
Also on the other side, Liverpool lifted the Premier League trophy at a packed Anfield on Sunday. The Reds lifted the English title in front of their own supporters for the first time in 35 years.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Hello and welcome back. You're watching WION World is One, and this is World DNA with me, Jyoti Kumar, and my colleague Diksha Bisla. Let's start with the headlines.
Happened to him, right?
US President Donald Trump blasts Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin over the bombing of Ukraine, says he's not happy with him.
Rescue teams in Gaza say at least 13 people have been killed in a pre-dawn Israeli strike on a school in Gaza City today. Dozens of Gazans, including 2 journalists, were reported killed in Israeli strikes on Sunday.
Hezbollah reiterates it will not discuss giving up its remaining weapons until Israel withdraws from the points it is occupying in southern Lebanon and stops conducting airstrikes.
India's global outreach continues. All-party delegation led by BJP MP Ravi Shankar Prasad arrives in French capital Paris to also visit UK, Germany, Italy, Denmark to convey India's strong and clear stance against terrorism. Congress MP Priyanka Chaturvedi, former Minister MJ Akbar, and Ambassador Pankaj Saran also part of the delegation.
Bangladesh's interim leader Mohammad Yunus says that the country is in a state of war both inside and outside the country. Says power struggle risks jeopardizing gains made so far amid pressure from the BNP to hold polls by December.
George Floyd's family and activists gather at his burial place to commemorate 5 years since his killing in Minneapolis.
Got 2 fists up on him. Right here, please.
President Trump announced that he's extending the EU tariff deadline to July 9th after a request from EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, easing trade tensions for now.
Rafael Nadal given an emotional farewell at the French Open as the Big Four reunited. His legacy is now forever etched in clay, with his footprint finding a home. Now, after a second day of marathon talks with various political parties in Dhaka, Bangladesh's interim leader Mohammad Yunus has called for rival parties to give him their full support.
Well, Yunus met around 20 political parties on Sunday. The marathon meetings came a day after Yunus met leaders of the BNP, Jamaat and the National Citizen Party. Shortly after the meetings on Sunday, the Yunus-led interim government issued a statement calling for broader unity to prevent the return of authoritarianism.
Earlier, BNP had reiterated its demand for national elections by December and pressed the Mohammad Yunus-led interim government to announce a roadmap for the polls. In a meeting with Chief Advisor Yunus Kandekar Mosharraf, who led the BNP delegation, said the topics of reform, justice and elections were not interrelated and that reforms would continue if it is voted back to power. The BNP also stuck to its demand for resignation of 2 student representatives in the advisory council, and that is Asif Mahmood and Mahfouz Alam.
It also sought the resignation of Yunus's national security advisor, Khalilur Rahman. The Jamaat demanded a timeline for the polls and reforms and a trial of Awami League leaders for their alleged role in mass killings during the July uprising.
While the NCP demanded reconstruction of the Election Commission and local government polls before the parliamentary elections, shortly after his meeting with the BNP and others, Yunus's press secretary reaffirmed that he remained committed to holding elections between December and June. Yunus is likely to hold a joint meeting with more than 10 political parties today. The development comes days after Bangladesh Army Chief, along with the Navy and Air Force chiefs, met Yunus and reportedly reiterated their call for election by December this year to allow an elected government to take charge. Earlier, Yunus vented his frustrations over ongoing protests and how they were hindering the government's core task of pushing reforms, ensuring justice for the July killings, and preparing for a free and fair election.
And Bangladesh tax workers have now ended a strike that lasted over 2 weeks in response to the Yunus government's decision to overhaul the country's National Board of Revenue.
Now, the agitation staged by the revenue workers halted after the interim government said that it would be addressing their demands to stop the overhauling of the body. Amid the entire row, tax collections remained stalled for 2 entire weeks in Bangladesh, whose economy has been in doldrums. NBR officials estimate that the government lost between $122 million and $163 million in revenue per day throughout the entire strike. The actual figure, though, remains impossible to be vetted.
The Mohammad Yunus-led government's decision sparked widespread outrage, ranging from ordinary employees to top-level management within the agency. Furthermore, the shift could allow civil servants from outside the NBR to take on senior leadership positions. The tax board protest has served as a stark reminder of how the deep internal fissures, conflicting loyalties, and a lack of coordination within the caretaker administration.
And on the same day, in a separate demonstration of disapproval, hundreds of civil servants gathered in Dhaka to oppose a government directive that would expand its authority to dismiss employees over disciplinary issues. With the US dollar's global dominance under threat amid rising geopolitical tensions, growing US deficits, and erratic policy moves, some say the greenback's grip on global finance is slipping.
But despite calls for de-dollarization, no rival currency appears ready to take its place. In this next report, we break down the pressures facing the dollar and why, for now, it remains the world's go-to currency. Take a look. The US dollar's dominance in global finance is under fresh scrutiny. Trade wars, political instability, and rising debt have led to calls for de-dollarization. The greenback currently accounts for nearly 60% of global foreign exchange reserves. Now, this is far ahead of the euro at around 20% and the Chinese yuan at just 3%. But recent US policies, like Trump's Liberation Day tariffs and efforts to influence the Federal Reserve, have eroded investor confidence. Still, the dollar remains the world's preferred currency for payments and reserves. Despite calls to replace the dollar, no currency is ready to step up. Europe faces political fragmentation and low growth. Japan struggles with stagnation. And China continues to restrict capital flows and central bank independence. SWIFT data shows the yuan makes up only about 2.3% of international payments. The depth and liquidity of US financial markets remain unmatched. Investors seeking diversification face a hard limit. Other economies simply lack the scale and stability required to absorb such large capital inflows. US Treasuries and the dollar have seen recent sell-offs, signaling what some call a buyer's strike amid rising deficits and inflation. Foreign holdings of treasuries are shrinking and doubts are growing over America's fiscal direction. But experts caution this may be a short-term reaction rather than a structural shift. While the dollar's position looks more fragile than ever, its dominance persists, less because of American strength and more due to the institutional weaknesses of its rivals. Business Bureau, WION World is One. And President Donald Trump hosted a private dinner at his Virginia Golf Club for 220 top investors in his meme cryptocurrency, Dollar Trump.
Now, the exclusive event featured Philip Manon, Hollywood, and half-hour speech from the president, capped off with a brief dance to YMCA.
While the White House said that Trump attended in his personal capacity, he stood behind the presidential seal to promote an industry that has become a key source of revenue for his brand. The event was closed to the media, but posts from attendees revealed that the top 25 investors were invited to a reception, with the top 4 receiving crypto-themed Trump-branded watches worth $100,000 each.
Now, the Dollar Trump meme coin, launched just days before Trump took office, has generated hundreds of millions of dollars through trading fees. The coin is tied to an entity controlled by the Trump Organization and has one unique feature, and that is access to Trump himself. The family's crypto ventures extend further. They hold a 60% stake in World Liberty Financial, a firm that recently launched the USD1 stablecoin.
Well, in a major deal, a UAE fund pledged to use $2 billion to invest in Binance, the world's largest crypto exchange. Meanwhile, Melania Trump has her own meme coin, and Trump's sons have launched a crypto mining company. Well, crypto has become one of the most significant sources of wealth for the Trump family.
Now, Trump's aggressive push into crypto has drawn concern from ethics experts and even allies within the industry. Critics say his blending of public office and personal business creates serious conflicts of interest, with Senator Richard Blumenthal calling the dinner an auction of access. Despite previously calling crypto a scam, Trump has embraced the sector since 2024, following promises of political funding from industry players.
Since taking office, the administration has paused multiple SEC cases against crypto firms and signed executive orders supporting digital assets. This includes a plan to build a US Bitcoin reserve. Now, while some praise this pro-crypto stance, others in the industry warn that his personal involvement risks damaging its long-term credibility.
Well, solar stocks tumbled this week after the U.S. House passed a controversial tax and spending bill backed by President Trump.
The bill proposes ending key clean energy tax credits from the Inflation Reduction Act 3 years earlier than expected, sparking a sell-off in the sector.
Now, SolarEdge, Sunrun, and Complete Solaria all declined by double digits. The Invesco Solar ETF dropped more than 7% following the vote, extending its year-to-date loss to over 6%. The bill also requires eligible solar and wind projects to begin construction within just 60 days of becoming law. And that's a change that industry leaders say could disrupt timelines, trigger layoffs, and lead to project cancellations.
Now, analysts warn that if the bill passes in its current form, it could cause widespread disruption across the clean energy sector. Analysts believe that the bill may lead to bankruptcies and a sharp drop in future installations, though they expect lobbying efforts in the Senate to soften the blow. In 2024, the US installed a record 38 gigawatts of solar capacity, a number that could shrink significantly if federal tax incentives are rolled back. Now, despite a Friday relief rally, investor sentiment remains weak amid broader concerns over high interest rates and policy volatility.
Now, the policy shift has also rattled solar manufacturers in India. Waaree Energies, which derives 57% of its orders from the US, saw its stock fall 10%. A Waaree spokesperson noted that India is not classified as an entity of concern and framed the developments as a potential opportunity.
Meanwhile, the US Department of Commerce announced that tariffs as high as 3,521% on solar panels from 4 Southeast Asian nations. Now, this may drive more companies to explore US or Indian manufacturing, but adds that further complexity to an already turbulent industry landscape. A silent, deadly threat is spreading and the world is not ready.
Well, the new research conducted by scientists at the University of Manchester shows that as the planet warms, infection-causing fungi like Aspergillus could spread significantly into new regions, putting millions more lives at risk.
This fungi can eat you from the inside out. Fungi are everywhere, in soil, water, even the air we breathe. Most are harmless, but some can be lethal, especially to those with weakened immune systems. Aspergillus, a common fungus, can cause a deadly lung infection called aspergillosis, with mortality rates as high as 40%. Now, scientists say its ranges could expand dramatically, reaching parts of North America, Europe, China, and Russia. One species, Aspergillus flavus, could spread by 16%, threatening both human health and food security.
Now, another Aspergillus fumigatus could expand by nearly 80% by the end of the century. Now, experts warn as temperatures rise, fungi are evolving to survive inside the human body. We'll add to that growing resistance to antifungal medicines, and we are facing a global health crisis in the making. The World Health Organization has already flagged Aspergillus as a critical threat, but there's still a lack of data, awareness, and action. The message from scientists is still clear. Fungal diseases are a growing lethal risk, and in a warming world, any of us could be next.
Now let's shift our focus to the world of sports. 25th of May has always been special for Liverpool.
Well, in 1977, they won their first ever European Cup, beating Borussia Mönchengladbach. In 2005, it was the Miracle of Istanbul coming back from 3-0 down to beat AC Milan in the Champions League final. And now, in 2025, the date is etched in history once again as Liverpool lifted the Premier League trophy at a packed Anfield.
The Reds were back on their perch last month, but Sunday was the moment that fans around the world had been waiting for. For the first time in 35 years, Liverpool lifted the English top-flight title in front of their own supporters. Now, to mark the occasion, legends returned to Anfield. Kenny Dalglish, Steven Gerrard, and even previous manager Jurgen Klopp were in the stands.
Now, there were 2 guard of honors before the kickoff, one for the Premier League champions and one for FA Cup winners. Crystal Palace, the match kicked off with a deafening rendition of You'll Never Walk Alone, but Anfield fell silent in the 9th minute as Ismaila Sarr put Palace ahead. Liverpool looked flat in the first half. That prompted manager Arne Slot to bring on Trent Alexander-Arnold, making his final appearance for the club. Unlike in the match against Arsenal, the Reds huffed and puffed, but the equalizer wouldn't come. And when Ryan Gravenberch was sent off, it looked like the game was gone.
But Mo Salah had other ideas as he volleyed home in the 84th minute to bring up his record equaling 47th goal involvement. Now Salah ends the season as the league's top scorer and leading assist provider. Then came the moment that Anfield had been waiting for. Alan Hansen, who captained the last